Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comments section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Robert Bever was born in 1997. He was the oldest child of David and April Bever. The family lived in a suburban house at 709 Magnolia Court in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Over the years, Robert's parents had more children. Eventually, there were 7 children in total: Robert, 3 sisters, and 3 younger brothers. The Bever family kept to themselves. David and April Bever homeschooled all their children. Because of this, the children did not go to a regular school or have school friends. The family also did not interact much with their neighbors. They rarely attended local events or visited with people on their street. Some neighbors did not even know the full names of the family members until much later. The family's life was very quiet and private. Inside the home, the parents had strict control. The children spent almost all their time at home or with each other. They did not participate in sports teams, clubs, or other activities with children outside the family. Their social world was very small, limited mostly to their siblings and parents. As the oldest, Robert had some responsibilities for his younger brothers and sisters. He was often around them. He did not have a job during most of his teenage years. His education came from his parents at home. The family's lifestyle was modest, and they did not have a lot of expensive things. Robert began to show certain interests as he got older. He spent a lot of time on the family computer. He developed a strong interest in weapons, particularly knives. He also started reading and watching material about famous violent events in history. He did not talk about these interests with people outside his family. When Robert became a teenager, his behavior at home changed somewhat. He became more quiet and withdrawn from his family at times. He argued with his parents occasionally, which is common for teenagers. He felt his parents were very strict and sometimes harsh. He later said his father could be verbally critical and that his parents would often talk about people or things they disliked in the world. To earn some money of his own, Robert eventually got a job. He worked at a religious call center. He saved the money he earned. He used this money to begin buying items like knives. He ordered some of these items online. He also looked into how to buy other things like protective gear. Robert's brother Michael, who was 2 years younger, was his closest sibling. The 2 brothers spent a lot of time together. They shared some of the same interests. They would talk and use the computer together in their home. This was the pattern of life in the Bever home. The family was isolated. Robert grew up in this enclosed environment, with his siblings as his main companions. He became a young adult who was largely unknown to the community around him. Robert Bever and his brother Michael began to plan a specific violent act. They talked about this plan together in private. Their plan was to kill their own family members inside their home. They also talked about a larger idea. After killing their family, they wanted to go to other places and kill many more people. They wanted their actions to become famous. To prepare, Robert used the money from his job. He ordered several items online. He bought knives of different kinds. He also bought a hatchet. He ordered protective gear like a vest and arm guards. He researched how to buy guns. He found out he could order a gun online and have it sent to a local gun shop for pickup. He planned to do this later. He also ordered a very large amount of bullets, scheduled to be delivered to the house. The brothers collected these items and hid them in their home. They also bought small wireless cameras. They planned to use these cameras to record what they were going to do. They talked about making 2 different videos later, a very graphic one for the police and an edited one to post online. In the days before the attack, Robert and Michael tested their equipment. They put on the protective gear inside the house. They made sure their weapons were sharp and ready. They placed the wireless cameras in certain rooms. They waited for a time when the whole family would be home. On the night of July 22nd, 2015, the plan began. It was late, almost 11:30 p.m. The parents and all the children were in the house. Robert and Michael put on their dark clothing and protective gear. They took hold of their knives and the hatchet. Their first step was to get their family members into one area of the house. To do this, they used a trick. They created a loud noise or a call for help. This made some of their siblings come to check on them. When a sibling entered a bedroom, Robert and Michael attacked them with the blades. The two brothers moved through the house. They attacked their father, David Bever, and their mother, April Bever. They attacked their younger brothers, 12-year-old Daniel and 7-year-old Christopher. They attacked their 5-year-old sister, Victoria. The attacks were violent and fast. The weapons caused severe wounds. During this, their 13-year-old sister, Crystal, was also attacked. Robert slit her throat and stabbed her in the stomach and arms. He then left her, believing she was dead or dying. Their 2-year-old sister, Autumn, was in an upstairs room. The brothers did not attack her. She was left alone. In the middle of the attacks, 12-year-old Daniel Bever was not immediately killed. He managed to get to a phone. He called 911. The emergency operator answered. Daniel said his brother was attacking the family. On the call, screams and noise could be heard. Then the line went silent. The 911 operator used the phone number to find the address. They tried to call the house back but got no answer. They immediately sent police officers to 709 Magnolia Court. Police arrived quickly. They saw blood on the front porch. They knocked and heard a weak voice calling for help from inside. They forced the door open. Inside, they found Crystal Bever alive but bleeding heavily from her many wounds. Officers pulled her out of the house to get her help. The police then searched further. They found the bodies of David, April, Daniel, Christopher, and Victoria. They were all dead from multiple stab and cut wounds. The weapons, a hatchet and knives, were found at the scene. The protective gear the brothers wore was also there. Robert and Michael Bever were still in the house when the police first arrived. They saw the police lights outside. They ran out the back door of the house and into a dark, wooded area behind the property. They tried to hide there. Police officers immediately began to search the area around the house after finding the victims. They used a police dog to help track the two brothers who had run away. The dog led officers into the wooded area behind the property. At 12:18 a.m., just minutes after arriving, the police found Robert and Michael Bever hiding under a bush. Robert was still holding a knife. The brothers were arrested without a fight. They were taken into police custody. At the police station, the brothers were questioned. During this process, one of them told the police about a flash drive. He said the flash drive was inside the family home and contained plans for the killings. Police officers returned to the house and searched it again. They found the flash drive. They also took the wireless cameras, computers, and cell phones from the home as evidence. The cameras were meant to record the attack. The next day, a delivery truck arrived at the Bever house. It was carrying a shipment of 3,000 bullets that Robert had ordered online. The delivery was part of the brothers' larger plan. Police took this as important evidence. They also looked at Robert Bever's social media accounts and internet activity. They found he had been searching for information about other mass killings and famous violent events. The only surviving victims were the two sisters. Crystal Bever, age 13, was rushed to the hospital. She had surgery for her throat and stab wounds. She survived and was able to tell the police that her brothers Robert and Michael were the attackers. The youngest sister, 2-year-old Autumn, was unharmed and was also taken into care. Both girls were placed in the custody of Child Welfare Services. The district attorney filed criminal charges against Robert and Michael Bever. They were each charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder for killing their parents and 3 siblings. They were also charged with 1 count of assault and battery with intent to kill for the attack on Crystal. Because of the serious nature of the crimes, the district attorney decided to charge 16-year-old Michael as an adult. The legal process moved forward. The brothers first pleaded not guilty. Robert Bever later changed his mind. On September 7, 2016, he stood in court and pleaded guilty to all charges. The judge accepted his plea. As a result, Robert Bever was sentenced to 5 life sentences for the murders, plus an additional life sentence for the attack on Crystal. The judge ordered that all these sentences run one after the other, with no chance of parole. This means Robert Bever will never be released from prison. Michael Bever chose to go to trial. His trial began in April 2018. During the trial, evidence was presented, including the flash drive plans, the weapons, and Crystal's testimony. The jury found Michael Bever guilty on all counts. In August 2018, the judge sentenced him. Michael received 5 life sentences for the murders, plus 25 years for the attack on Crystal. The judge ruled that he must serve 225 years in prison before he could be considered for parole. This effectively means he will also spend the rest of his life in prison. After the trials, the house where the crimes happened remained empty. It was damaged from the police investigation and became a target for trespassers. In March 2017, the house caught fire and was destroyed. The city later cleared the land. In 2019, a small public park called Reflection Park was opened on the spot where the house once stood. Robert and Michael Bever were sent to different state prisons. In prison, Robert Bever had further problems. In 2019, he attacked 2 prison guards. For this new crime, he was given 3 more life sentences in 2020, adding to his existing sentences. He remains in a maximum security prison. Michael Bever is serving his sentence in a separate correctional facility. The story of the Bever family crimes ended with the 2 perpetrators imprisoned for life and the community creating a place of peace where violence once occurred. Story 2. Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. was born on September 26, 1951, in Brooklyn, New York. He was the oldest child of Ronald DeFeo Sr. and Louise DeFeo. Later, the family moved to a house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, Long Island. His father, Ronald Sr., owned a car repair and sales business called Buick City. The family had money. Ronald Sr. was a strict man with a bad temper. He often yelled and argued with people. He was physically strong and had a reputation for being mean. At home, he ruled the family with fear. Young Ronald Jr., who everyone called Butch, was often scared of his father. His mother, Louise, was described as quiet. She did not often step in to stop her husband's anger. Butch felt she favored his younger sisters. He grew up feeling his mother did not protect him from his father's harsh ways. Butch had 4 younger brothers and sisters, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John. As the oldest, he did not take care of them. He was often in trouble himself. He did not do well in school. He had learning problems and often got into fights with other students. He was seen as a bully. He quit high school before finishing. He went to work for his father's business. His father was his boss. Butch did not like taking orders from his father. He argued with his father at work. He felt his father criticized him all the time and did not pay him enough money. Butch wanted more money and more freedom. Outside of work, Butch spent time at bars. He liked to drink alcohol. He also started using drugs. He used heroin and LSD. He spent the money he earned on drugs and partying. He had a girlfriend. His social life was mostly about drinking with friends in bars. From a young age, Butch got into trouble with the law. When he was 18, he was arrested for stealing a boat engine. He was put on probation for that crime. He continued to get into fights. He owned guns and liked to show them off to his friends. He talked a lot about how tough he was. He lived at home with his parents and siblings until he was 23 years old. He did not move out. He argued with his father about money and about his lifestyle. His relationship with his family was very bad. He felt trapped and angry. On the night of November 12th, 1974, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. was at home with his family at 112 Ocean Avenue. He had been arguing with his father again. Butch believed his father had a large amount of money, from both the business and from life insurance policies. Butch wanted that money for himself. He was also deeply angry and felt controlled by his parents. Late that night, after everyone was asleep, Butch took action. He went downstairs to the basement of the house. He retrieved a .35 caliber Marlin lever-action rifle that he owned. He loaded the rifle with bullets. He then walked back upstairs to the second floor of the house. He went to his parents' bedroom first. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning. His father, Ronald Sr., was asleep in his bed. Butch shot his father twice in the back with the rifle. The shots killed his father. His mother, Louise, was in the same bed. The sound of the gunshots woke her up. Butch then shot his mother twice. She was also killed. Next, Butch went to his sister's room. His older sister, Dawn, who was 18 years old, was asleep in her bed. Butch shot her once in the back, killing her. His younger sister, Allison, who was 13 years old, was in the same room. She had likely been awakened by the gunshots from her parents' room. Butch shot Allison once in the back as well. She was killed. Then, Butch went to his brother's room. His brother Mark, who was 12 years old, was asleep in his bed. Butch shot him once in the back, killing him. His youngest brother John, who was 9 years old, was also asleep. Butch shot John once in the back, killing him. After shooting all 6 members of his family, Butch put the rifle down. He then took steps to hide what he had done. He collected the empty bullet casings from the rifle. He changed out of his clothes, which had blood on them. He took a bath to wash off any evidence. He bundled the bloody clothes and the rifle together. Later, he would throw these items into a canal near his father's business. He then went about his normal morning routine. He dressed for work. He left the house, got into his car, and drove away. He went to his job at his father's car dealership, Buick City. He acted as if nothing was wrong. He worked there for several hours. Later in the afternoon, he returned to the empty house at 112 Ocean Avenue. He moved the bodies of his family members. He arranged each person in their bed so they were lying face down. He pulled the bed covers over them. He did this to make it look like they had been shot while sleeping and had not woken up. In the early evening, Butch went to a bar he often visited called Henry's Bar. He acted upset. He told the people in the bar that he was worried about his parents. He said, "You got to help me. I think my mother and father are shot." He asked some people from the bar, including a friend, to go back to the house with him. When they arrived at the house, Butch let them inside. He pointed them toward his parents' bedroom upstairs. The people from the bar saw the bodies of Butch's parents. One of them, his friend, used the telephone in the house to call the police. When the police arrived, they searched the house. They found the bodies of all 6 family members in their beds. The police officers began to ask Butch questions. Butch told them a story. He said that the killer might be a mob hitman named Louis Fellini, who had a problem with his father. The police took Butch to the station to ask him more questions. They did this to protect him, as he was the only surviving family member. At the station, the police noticed that Butch's story had many problems. The times he gave did not make sense. His calm behavior also seemed strange to them. At the police station, detectives continued to question Ronald DeFeo Jr. They checked his story about the mob hitman, Louis Fellini. They quickly discovered that Fellini was in another state at the time of the killings. This meant he could not have done it. Butch's story fell apart. The detectives also found his behavior strange. He was not acting like a person who had just found his family murdered. He was calm and asked questions about his father's life insurance money. Under continued questioning, Butch changed his story. He then confessed to the killings. He told the detectives, "Once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast." He explained how he shot each family member. He told the police where he had hidden the evidence. He said he had thrown the murder rifle and his bloody clothes off a bridge into a canal near his father's business. Police went to the location Butch described. They dragged the canal. They found the .35 caliber Marlin rifle and a bundle of clothes. These items were collected as evidence. The police also gathered the bullet casings Butch had thrown away. The medical examiner confirmed the cause of death for all 6 victims was gunshot wounds. The evidence matched Butch's confession. Ronald DeFeo Jr. was charged with 6 counts of murder. His trial began in October 1975. His lawyer argued that Butch was not guilty by reason of insanity. This means the lawyer said Butch was so mentally ill at the time of the crime that he did not know what he was doing was wrong. A psychiatrist for the defense testified that Butch had mental problems and heard voices. The prosecution argued that Butch knew exactly what he was doing. A psychiatrist for the prosecution said Butch had an antisocial personality disorder. This means he did not care about right or wrong, but he was not insane. The prosecution said his motive was to get his parents' money and life insurance. They showed that he had asked about the insurance money right after the murders. The jury listened to all the evidence. They did not believe the insanity defense. On November 21, 1975, the jury found Ronald DeFeo Jr. guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. On December 4th, the judge sentenced him to 6 prison terms of 25 years to life. The sentences were to be served one after the other, meaning he would not be eligible for parole for a very long time. DeFeo was sent to state prison. Over the years, he went before the parole board many times. Each time, the parole board denied his release. They said he showed no real remorse for his crimes. He remained in prison for the rest of his life. The 6 victims, his parents, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters, were buried in St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale, New York. Ronald Joseph DeFeo Jr. died in custody on March 12, 2021, at the age of 69 in an Albany hospital. He had served 45 years in prison. The official cause of his death was not made public. With his death, the legal case that began on November 13, 1974, was finally closed. Story 3. Christopher Watts was born in May 1985 in Spring Lake, North Carolina. He grew up there with his parents and his younger sister. His childhood was not unusual. He lived in a regular house, went to local schools, and played baseball. He was described as a quiet and polite boy. He did not stand out in any particular way. He avoided conflict and tried to make people happy. After finishing high school, Chris did not go to a university. He took jobs where he could find them. He worked at an auto shop for a while. He then got a job in a factory that made tires. He was a reliable worker who did what he was told. He did not have many close friends. His social life was small and mostly involved his family. In 2010, when he was 25 years old, Chris met a woman named Shannon Razusek online. Shannon was from Aberdeen, North Carolina. She was more outgoing and ambitious than Chris. She had strong opinions and knew what she wanted in life. Chris was attracted to her confidence. They began a relationship. Shannon moved to Colorado for a fresh start. Chris decided to follow her there to be with her. In Colorado, Chris got a job with an oil and gas company called Anadarko Petroleum. His job was as an operator at oil well sites. It was a stable job with good pay. Shannon worked in sales for a company that made dietary supplements. They got married in North Carolina in November 2012. The couple bought a large, two-story house in Frederick, Colorado in 2013. The house was expensive and had 5 bedrooms. They wanted to start a family. Their first daughter, Bella, was born in December 2013. Their second daughter, Celeste, was born in July 2015. From the outside, their life looked perfect. They shared pictures of their family and home on social media. However, there were financial problems. In 2015, Chris and Shanann filed for bankruptcy. They had too much debt from credit cards and their large mortgage. Their financial situation was stressful. Shanann tried to make more money by selling health products from home for a multi-level marketing company. Chris continued his job at the oil company. Chris was a hands-on father. He bathed his children, read to them, and put them to bed. He and Shanann argued sometimes, like many couples. Their arguments were often about money. Chris was very passive. He would often agree with Shanann to end an argument, even if he did not really agree. He kept his feelings to himself. In early 2018, Shanann announced she was pregnant with their third child, a boy. Chris told people he was happy about the baby. Around the same time, Chris began to lose weight and change his appearance. He started exercising more. He said it was because of the health products Shanann sold. In the spring of 2018, Chris began talking more with a female co-worker. Their friendship became closer. He did not tell Shanann how close he had become with this co-worker. The family's financial pressures continued. The mortgage on their big house was due every month. They also had to pay for childcare, cars, and daily living costs. Shanann often talked about their life on social media, showing a happy family. Chris went to work, came home, and spent time with his children. To friends and neighbors, he seemed like a devoted family man. In early August 2018, Chris Watts's relationship with his co-worker had become romantic. He saw her as a new start, without financial pressure or his family. He decided he wanted out of his marriage and family life. He did not want a divorce because of the cost and conflict. He began to think about killing his wife, Shanann. Shanann and their 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, had been away in Arizona for several days. They returned home very late on Sunday, August 12th. A friend dropped Shanann at the house around 2 a.m. on Monday, August 13th. The children were asleep. Chris was waiting inside, awake. An argument began. Chris told Shanann he wanted a separation. He said he did not love her anymore. Shanann was upset and confused. The argument moved into their bedroom. During this emotional confrontation, Chris Watts put his hands around Shanann's neck and strangled her. He did not stop until she died. Their unborn son, Nico, also died. After killing Shanann, Chris Watts wrapped her body in a bedsheet. He then dragged her body down the stairs and through the garage. He put her body on the floor of his work truck, which was a large, white pickup truck. He needed to dispose of her body. He then had to deal with his 2 daughters. Bella, who was 4 years old, had woken up and come into the master bedroom. She asked what was wrong with her mother. Chris told Bella that her mother was not well. He took Bella back to her bedroom. His plan now included killing his children, so there would be no witnesses, and he could be with his girlfriend. Chris Watts first went to Celeste's room. The 3-year-old was still asleep. He smothered her with his hand over her face until she stopped breathing. He then carried her lifeless body downstairs and out to his truck, placing her next to her mother's body, which was still wrapped in the sheet. He returned inside for Bella. He did the same thing to his 4-year-old daughter, smothering her in her bed. He then carried Bella's body down and placed her in the truck with her mother and sister. He did not use car seats. The bodies of his entire family were now in the cab of his work truck. It was now early Monday morning before sunrise. Chris Watts backed his truck into the garage to load tools and hide the bodies from view. A neighbor's security camera recorded his truck moving in and out of the garage at this time. He then drove about 45 minutes to the remote oil field site where he worked for Anadarko Petroleum. When he arrived at the oil site, it was still dark and no one else was there. He first carried Shanann's body to a secluded area near a small hill. He used a shovel from his truck to dig a very shallow grave. He placed her body in it and covered it with dirt and rocks. He was not careful, and part of the sheet she was wrapped in was left visible above the dirt. He then faced the problem of disposing of his daughter's bodies. He decided to put them into large metal storage tanks that held crude oil. These tanks had circular hatches on top, only 8 inches wide. He carried Celeste's body up a ladder on the side of the first tank. He forced her small body through the tiny opening, and she fell into the oil inside. He did the same thing with Bella's body at a second tank nearby. The metal edges of the hatch scratched Bella's skin as he pushed her through. Chris Watts then went to his normal job site, which was a different location run by the same company. He worked his usual shift that Monday. He acted normally with his co-workers. He also sent text messages to Shanann's phone, asking where she was, to create a false story that she had left him. He communicated with his girlfriend throughout the day. When Shanann's friend could not reach her, she became worried. She went to the Watts house around noon. Chris was still at work. The friend called the police. Chris was called and came home. He told the police he had no idea where his family was. He said Shanann might have gone to a friend's house. He gave permission for the police to search his empty house. He later did television interviews in front of his house, asking for his family to come home. He claimed he just wanted them back. The police found Chris Watts's behavior suspicious. During his television interview, he did not seem genuinely worried. He asked for the return of his family, not specifically for his wife or daughters by name. He also did not make a direct plea to Shanann herself to come home. Investigators thought this was strange. They also reviewed the security footage from his neighbor's house. The footage from early Monday morning showed Chris's truck backed into his garage for a long time, which matched when he said he was just leaving for work. This seemed like an odd thing to do. Because of their suspicions, the police asked Chris to come to the police station for a formal interview on Wednesday, August 15th. They also asked him to take a polygraph test, which is sometimes called a lie detector test. Chris agreed. During the polygraph, the examiner asked him if he knew where Shanann was and if he had caused her harm. The results of the test indicated that Chris was not telling the truth. After failing the polygraph, Chris was left alone in an interview room with his father. During this private talk, Chris confessed to his father that he had killed Shanann. He then told a lie to his father. He said he had seen Shanann hurting their daughters, so he strangled her in a rage. Following this, police detectives came into the room. Chris repeated this false story to the detectives. He said Shanann had killed the children, and he had killed her. This confession meant the police now knew a murder had occurred. As part of his confession, Chris agreed to show the police where the bodies were located. He marked a map of the Anadarko oil field site. Police and FBI agents went to that remote location immediately. Using Chris's directions, they quickly found Shanann's shallow grave. Her body was partially uncovered. They then located the 2 large oil tanks Chris had described. They had to use special equipment to pump out the crude oil from the tanks. Inside, they found the bodies of Bella and Celeste. Chris Watts was formally arrested on August 15th. The police charged him with 5 counts of first-degree murder. This included 3 counts for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, 1 count for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy, and an additional count for each child under the age of 12. He was also charged with tampering with dead bodies for the way he disposed of them. In jail, Chris eventually told the full truth. He admitted he had lied about Shanann killing the girls. He confessed that he had smothered Celeste and Bella himself after killing their mother. He said he had planned the murders because he wanted to start a new life with his girlfriend and did not want his family anymore. The evidence against him was very strong. It included his confession, the security footage, his failed polygraph, the bodies found where he said they would be, and his changing stories. To avoid a trial where he could be given the death penalty, Chris's lawyers made a deal with the prosecutors. In exchange for pleading guilty to all charges, the prosecutors would not ask for the death penalty. Shanann's family agreed with this decision because they did not want a long, painful trial. On November 6, 2018, Chris Watts pleaded guilty in court. On November 19th, he was sentenced. The judge gave him 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. This meant he would never be released from prison. He received additional years in prison for tampering with the bodies. He was later transferred to a maximum security prison in Wisconsin to serve his sentences. The house in Colorado was sold, and the victims' families sought to remember Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico in their own ways. Chris Watts remains in prison for the rest of his life. Story 4. Scott Peterson was born in San Diego, California, in 1972. He was the only child born to his mother and father together, but he had older half-brothers and sisters from his parents' earlier relationships. The family lived in a small apartment. Scott's father owned a packaging business, and his mother owned a clothing store. From a very young age, Scott enjoyed playing golf. He became very good at it. In high school, he played on the golf team with other students who would later become professional golfers. Scott dreamed of becoming a professional golfer himself. After high school, he went to a university in Arizona on a golf scholarship. At the university, Scott found the competition very tough. Another golfer's father also complained that Scott had taken his son out for drinks. Because of this, the golf coach removed Scott from the team. Scott then left that university. He moved back to California and enrolled in a different college. He changed his major from golf to agricultural business. His professors there said he was a very good student. Lacey Rocha was born in 1975 in California. She grew up on her family's dairy farm. Her parents divorced when she was very young. After the divorce, Lacey's mother moved Lacey and her older brother to the city of Modesto. Lacey's mother began a long-term relationship with a man named Ron Gransky, who helped raise Lacey and her brother. Lacey visited her father on the farm on weekends. Lacey was cheerful and active. In school, she was a cheerleader. After high school, she went to the same university in California where Scott would later study. She chose to study ornamental horticulture, which involves plants and gardening. Scott and Lacey met at this university. Scott was working at a restaurant. Lacey had a friend who also worked there, and she would visit. In 1994, Lacey sent Scott her phone number. She told her mother she had met the man she would marry. Scott called Lacey, and they started dating. Their relationship became serious. Scott stopped focusing on becoming a professional golfer. He decided to focus on a business career instead. Scott and Lacey dated for 2 years. They moved in together. After Lacey graduated, they got married in 1997. Scott finished his final year of university after they were married. Lacey got a job near the school. Scott graduated with a degree in agricultural business in 1998. After graduation, Scott and Lacey used their money to open a sports bar. A few years later, they decided to sell the bar. They wanted to move to Lacey's hometown of Modesto to start a family. They sold the bar in 2001. In 2000, they had already bought a house in a nice neighborhood in Modesto. In Modesto, Lacey worked sometimes as a substitute teacher. Scott got a job as a salesman for a fertilizer company. He made a good salary. Friends and family described Lacey as a perfect housewife. She enjoyed cooking, gardening, and decorating their home. In 2002, Lacey learned she was pregnant. The baby, a boy, was due in February 2003. They planned to name him Connor. In November 2002, a friend introduced Scott Peterson to a woman named Amber Fry. Amber was a massage therapist who lived in Fresno, California. Scott told Amber he was not married. He began a romantic relationship with her. He did not tell Amber about his pregnant wife, Lacey. On December 9, 2002, Scott told Amber a new story. He said he had been married, but that his wife had died. He said this would be his first Christmas without her. This was a lie. Lacey was alive and at home in Modesto. On December 23, 2002, Scott and Lacey went to a hair salon where Lacey's sister worked. The sister cut Scott's hair. Scott said he would play golf the next day, on Christmas Eve. Later that night, Lacey spoke to her mother on the phone. This was one of the last times anyone other than Scott would hear from her. Scott later told police that on the morning of December 24th, he left his house to go fishing. He said he left around 9:30 a.m. He said Lacey was still at home. He said she was watching a television show and planned to walk their dog, a golden retriever named Mackenzie, later that day. A neighbor found the Petersons' dog alone in the street, with its leash on, around 10:30 that morning. The neighbor put the dog in the Petersons' backyard. Another neighbor saw the dog in the yard later that morning. Lacey was not seen. Scott said he drove to the Berkeley Marina, about 90 miles from Modesto, to fish. He said he returned home in the afternoon. He said Lacey's car was there, but the house was empty. He said he found the dog in the backyard. He then took a shower and washed his clothes. Scott called Lacey's mother to ask if Lacey was with her. This is when Lacey's family learned she was missing. Scott and Lacey's stepfather called the police to report Lacey missing shortly before 6 p.m. Lacey was 8 months pregnant. Police arrived at the house. They spoke to Scott. Scott told them he had been fishing at the Berkeley Marina. Police saw Lacey's purse, keys, and wallet inside the house. Nothing appeared to be stolen. Police began to organize a search for Lacey. The next day, many people searched for Lacey. Family, friends, and neighbors put up missing person posters. The police used dogs and helicopters to search the local parks and waterways. The story was on the news across the country. A large reward was offered for information. From the beginning, the police detectives found Scott's behavior unusual. He was very calm. He did not ask the detectives many questions about what they were doing to find his wife. He did not seem emotionally upset. Lacey's family defended Scott at first, saying he and Lacey were a happy couple. In late December, a tip came to the police because of the news coverage. Amber Fry, Scott's girlfriend, contacted detectives. She told them she had been dating Scott since November. She said Scott told her he was single, and then later that he was a widower. The police now believed Scott had lied to Amber and had a motive for wanting Lacey gone. The police asked Amber to help them. They gave her a device to record her phone calls with Scott. They hoped Scott would say something about Lacey's disappearance on the phone. In these calls, Scott continued to lie to Amber. He even told her he was spending New Year's Eve in Paris, when he was actually in Modesto. In mid-January 2003, the police told Lacey's family about Scott's affair. Lacey's mother, Sharon Rocha, was devastated. She now believed Scott was involved in Lacey's disappearance. On January 24th, Lacey's family held a press conference to say they no longer supported Scott. That same day, Amber Fry held her own press conference to tell the public about her relationship with Scott. Lacey was still missing. Then on April 13, 2003, a man walking his dog on the shore of San Francisco Bay found the body of a baby boy. The next day, April 14th, a woman found a female body on the same shoreline, about a mile away. The police used DNA tests. On April 18th, they confirmed the bodies were Lacey and her unborn son, Connor. They had been in the water for months. After the bodies of Lacey and Connor were found, the police investigation changed from a missing person case to a murder case. Scott Peterson was the main suspect. Police searched his home, his truck, and a storage warehouse he used. In his boat, which was kept at the warehouse, they found a pair of pliers. A single hair was wrapped around the pliers. Scientists tested the hair. They compared it to hairs from Lacey's hairbrush. The tests showed the hair from the boat was very likely Lacey's. In the warehouse, police also found tools covered with a dusty powder. This powder was cement. Scott had told police he used a bag of cement to make one weight for his boat anchor. He said he used the rest of the cement to fix his driveway. Police found evidence that suggested more than one anchor had been made. Prosecutors later claimed Scott made several heavy cement anchors to tie to Lacey's body and sink it in the bay. No such anchors were ever found. Police also began secretly following Scott and tracking his location. In April 2003, they tracked him to San Diego, near the border with Mexico. They believed he was planning to run away. On April 18th, the police arrested Scott at a golf course in San Diego. He had dyed his hair blonde. In his car, police found camping gear, survival equipment, many changes of clothes, several cell phones, and almost $15,000 in cash. He also had 2 driver's licenses, his own and his brother's. The police said this showed he was preparing to disappear. Scott was taken to jail in Modesto. He was charged with 2 counts of murder, one for Lacey and one for her unborn son, Connor. He said he was not guilty. Because the case was so famous in Modesto, the judge moved the trial to a different county to try to find a fair jury. The trial began in June 2004. The prosecutors argued that Scott killed Lacey because he wanted to be single and continue his affair with Amber Frey. They said he felt trapped by his marriage and the pregnancy. They presented evidence that the Petersons had a lot of credit card debt, suggesting financial pressure. They played the recorded phone calls of Scott lying to Amber Frey after Lacey vanished. Many witnesses talked about Scott's strange behavior. They said he showed little emotion after Lacey disappeared. He talked about selling their house and traded in Lacey's car. He told some people he had been golfing on the day Lacey vanished, not fishing. Lacey's mother testified that Scott avoided her when she tried to hug him during the search. The defense lawyer argued that the police focused only on Scott and ignored other possibilities. He said there was no direct proof, like an eyewitness or a murder weapon. He suggested someone else kidnapped and killed Lacey. A medical expert for the defense said the baby might have been born alive later, but this was strongly disputed by other doctors. The jury listened for months. In November 2004, they decided Scott was guilty. They found him guilty of first-degree murder for killing Lacey and second-degree murder for killing Connor. A few weeks later, the same jury decided his punishment should be death. In March 2005, a judge formally sentenced Scott Peterson to death by lethal injection. He was sent to San Quentin prison to live on death row while his appeals were processed. Scott's lawyers appealed the verdict and the death sentence for many years. In 2020, the California Supreme Court reviewed the case. They agreed with the guilty verdict. However, they overturned the death sentence. They found that the trial judge had made a mistake during jury selection. The judge had dismissed potential jurors who said they were against the death penalty without asking if they could still be fair. Because of this error, a new penalty phase was needed. In 2021, the prosecutors decided not to seek the death penalty again. In December 2021, a judge resentenced Scott Peterson to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was later moved from San Quentin to another prison to serve this life sentence. Scott and his new lawyers from an Innocence Project continued to file appeals, claiming new evidence. As of now, all courts have upheld his murder convictions, and he remains in prison for the rest of his life. Lacey and Connor were buried in a cemetery in Modesto. Their deaths led to a federal law called Lacey and Connor's Law, which makes it a separate crime to harm an unborn child during an attack on a pregnant woman. Lacey's mother started a fund in her name to help search for missing persons. Scott Peterson will spend the rest of his life in prison for the murders of his wife and unborn son. Story 5. Oscar Leonard Carl Pistorius was born on November 22, 1986, in Sandton, South Africa. He grew up in a family with his father Heinke, his mother Sheila, an older brother, and a younger sister. His family was Christian and spoke Afrikaans at home. His mother was a very important person to him. Oscar was born with a condition called fibular hemimelia. This meant he was missing the fibula bones in both of his lower legs. Because of this, when he was only 11 months old, doctors amputated both of his legs below the knee. He learned to walk using prosthetic legs. He went to Constantia Kloof Primary School and later to Pretoria Boys High School. As a boy, he was very active in sports. He played rugby, water polo, and tennis. He also took part in Olympic wrestling and boxing at a local gym. His coach at the gym later said it took him 6 months to notice Oscar had no legs because Oscar was so capable. In June 2003, Oscar hurt his knee playing rugby. While he was doing exercises to recover from this injury in early 2004, a coach named Ampy Lou introduced him to running. Oscar liked it immediately. He got his first running prosthetic blades, which are special curved limbs made for sprinting, from a South African specialist. When those broke, he was connected to an American company called Osser, which made him stronger carbon fiber blades. Oscar began studying business management at the University of Pretoria in 2006. Because of his growing sports career, his studies took longer, and he joked he might finish his degree by age 30. His running career started quickly. He competed in Paralympic events for athletes with amputations. In 2004, at the Athens Paralympics, he won a gold medal in the 200-meter race and set a world record. He soon began trying to run in races against athletes without disabilities. Some people argued that his curved cheetah blades might give him an unfair advantage. In 2008, the International Association of Athletics Federations, IAAF, banned him from their competitions because of this. Oscar appealed the decision. Scientists and courts reviewed the evidence and decided the blades did not give him a net advantage. The ban was removed. He tried very hard to qualify for the 2008 Summer Olympics, but did not achieve the fast enough time. However, at the 2008 Beijing Paralympics, he won 3 gold medals. He continued training and improving. In 2011, he finally ran a fast enough time to qualify for the 2012 World Championships and the 2012 Summer Olympics against non-disabled runners. This was a major achievement. At the 2012 London Olympics, Oscar made history by being the first amputee runner to compete in the Olympic Games. He ran in the 400-meter individual race and the 4x400-meter relay. Later, at the 2012 London Paralympics, he won gold medals in the 400-meter race and the 4x100-meter relay. Because of his success, he became famous worldwide. He was called the Blade Runner. He won sports awards and was on magazine lists. He earned money from sponsorship deals with big companies like Nike and Oakley. He lived in a large house in a secure estate in Pretoria. Outside of sports, Oscar had other interests. He liked architecture, breeding racehorses, and playing golf. He had tattoos on his body, including one of the Olympic rings. In 2009, he was in a serious boat accident that broke bones in his face, but he recovered. He was known as a determined and competitive athlete who overcame a major physical challenge to reach the top level of sport. His life was focused on training, competition, and his public career. In late 2012 and early 2013, Oscar Pistorius was in a relationship with a woman named Riva Steenkamp. Riva was a 29-year-old model and law graduate from South Africa. The couple had been dating for a few months. On February 13th, 2013, Riva went to stay at Oscar's home in the Silver Woods Country Estate, a secure housing complex in Pretoria. In the evening, they were together at his house. Later, during the night and into the very early morning of February 14th, an argument happened between them. Neighbors would later report hearing sounds of a dispute coming from the home. The argument caused Riva to leave the bedroom and go into a bathroom located adjacent to the bedroom. She entered a small toilet cubicle inside the bathroom and locked the door from the inside. Oscar Pistorius later stated that he got out of bed to bring in 2 fans from the balcony. He then closed the sliding doors to the balcony and pulled the curtains. He said he did not realize Riva had left the bed. He claimed that as he walked back from the balcony, he heard a sound coming from the bathroom. He believed an intruder or intruders had broken into his house through the bathroom window and were now hiding in the toilet. He said he felt a sense of terror and vulnerability because he was on his stumps, without his prosthetic legs on. He stated he quickly retrieved his 9mm pistol from under his bed. He moved towards the bathroom. He said he called out to Riva to phone the police, but he did not hear a response from her. He then directed his shouts towards the bathroom door, yelling for the perceived intruder to get out. He stated that upon hearing what he thought was movement inside the toilet cubicle, he fired 4 shots through the closed toilet door. The bullets were Black Talon brand, which are designed to expand on impact. He fired in quick succession. 3 of the 4 bullets hit Riva Steenkamp. 1 bullet struck her in the head, 1 in the arm, and 1 in the hip. The injuries were immediately catastrophic and fatal. After shooting, Pistorius put on his prosthetic legs. He then used a cricket bat to break down the locked toilet door. He found Riva inside, slumped over and critically wounded. He pulled her out of the small room and downstairs to the entrance of the house. He called a man named Johan Stander, who was the manager of the estate, and screamed for help. He also called for paramedics. Johan Stander and his daughter arrived at the house quickly. They found Pistorius trying to administer first aid to Riva, who was bleeding heavily from her wounds. Paramedics arrived soon after, but declared Riva Steenkamp dead at the scene. Police were called and arrived to secure the area. The police found the 9mm firearm at the scene. They also found the cricket bat used to break down the door. Oscar Pistorius was taken into police custody for questioning in the early hours of the morning. He was formally arrested later on February 14th, Valentine's Day. He was charged with the murder of Riva Steenkamp. During his initial court appearance, his defense team stated he would argue that the shooting was a tragic mistake. He claimed he had no intention of killing Riva Steenkamp, as he believed he was shooting at an unknown intruder who posed a threat to his and Riva's life. The state prosecutors, however, charged him with premeditated murder, suggesting he intentionally killed his girlfriend after their argument. The police investigation began immediately at the scene on February 14th, 2013. Detectives gathered evidence including the firearm, the cricket bat, and Oscar Pistorius's prosthetic legs. They documented the layout of the bedroom and bathroom. Forensic experts collected blood samples and ballistic evidence. The post-mortem examination confirmed Riva Steenkamp died from multiple gunshot wounds. Oscar Pistorius was formally charged with premeditated murder. He was granted bail after a hearing that attracted worldwide media attention. His bail conditions included surrendering his passports, not leaving the Pretoria district, and avoiding all witnesses in the case. He was also required to report to a police station twice a week and abstain from using drugs or alcohol. The trial, held in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, began on March 3, 2014. It was presided over by Judge Thokozile Masipa. The prosecution was led by State Advocate Jerry Nell. The defense team was led by Advocate Barry Rue. The trial was broadcast on television and followed internationally. The prosecution's argument was that Pistorius intentionally killed Riva Steenkamp after a heated argument. They presented neighbors' testimony about hearing a woman scream, followed by moments of silence, and then the sound of gunshots. They argued this sequence showed a pause, indicative of premeditation. They also presented text messages between the couple that showed moments of tension in their relationship. The defense's argument was that Pistorius made a terrible mistake, believing he was shooting at an intruder to protect himself and Riva. Pistorius testified in his own defense, often becoming emotional. He demonstrated in court how he moved on his stumps. The defense argued his vulnerability without his prosthetics fueled his fear. During the trial, Judge Masipa ordered a psychiatric evaluation to determine if Pistorius could be held criminally responsible. After a month at a psychiatric hospital, evaluators concluded he was not mentally ill at the time of the shooting and could be held accountable. On September 12, 2014, Judge Masipa delivered her verdict. She found Oscar Pistorius not guilty of premeditated murder. She stated the prosecution had not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to kill Riva Steenkamp with prior planning. However, she found him guilty of the lesser charge of culpable homicide. This South African law is similar to manslaughter, meaning he was negligent and caused death unlawfully, but without intent to kill. He was also found guilty on one of several firearm charges, for recklessly firing a gun in a restaurant on a previous occasion. On October 21, 2014, Judge Masipa sentenced Pistorius to a maximum of 5 years in prison for culpable homicide. He was given a separate, suspended 3-year sentence for the gun charge. He was taken directly to the Kosi Mampuru II prison in Pretoria to begin his sentence. The state prosecution was not satisfied with the verdict. They applied for permission to appeal, arguing the judge made an error in law. They believed the facts showed he must have known that firing into a small toilet cubicle would kill whoever was inside, which meets the legal standard for murder. Permission was granted. In December 2015, the Supreme Court of Appeal heard the case. A panel of 5 judges unanimously overturned the culpable homicide verdict. They found Pistorius guilty of murder, applying the legal principle of dolus eventualis. This means a person is guilty of murder if they foresaw the possibility of death from their actions, but proceeded anyway. The court stated that any reasonable person would have foreseen that firing 4 high-caliber bullets into a small toilet door would kill the person behind it. The case was sent back to the trial court for a new sentence. In July 2016, Judge Masipa sentenced Pistorius to 6 years in prison for murder. The state prosecution again appealed, calling this sentence shockingly lenient. In November 2017, the Supreme Court of Appeal increased his sentence to 13 years and 5 months. Pistorius's final attempt to appeal to the Constitutional Court failed in 2018. This longer sentence became his final sentence. Oscar Pistorius served his sentence in the Atarajevo Correctional Center. According to South African law, he became eligible for parole after serving half of his sentence. A parole hearing was held in March 2023. Riva Steenkamp's mother, June Steenkamp, opposed his release, stating she did not believe he was truly remorseful. The parole board denied his release at that time, deciding to review it in a year. A second parole hearing was held in November 2023. June Steenkamp did not oppose his parole this time. The parole board approved his release under specific conditions. Oscar Pistorius was released on parole on January 5, 2024. His parole conditions include not speaking to the media, attending therapy for anger and gender-based violence, and performing community service. He will remain under correctional supervision until his sentence officially ends in December 2029. After Riva Steenkamp's death, her mother, June, established the Reva Rebecca Steenkamp Foundation to advocate against domestic violence and support victims. The legal process lasted over a decade, from the night of the shooting to his final release on parole. The story of the crime and its long aftermath concluded with the parole board's decision to release him under strict conditions for the remainder of his sentence. Story 6. Travis Victor Alexander was born on July 28, 1977, in Riverside, California. His parents were Gary Alexander and Pamela Alexander. Travis's childhood had a big change when he was 8 years old. At that time, he moved into the home of his father's parents, his paternal grandparents. He lived there with them. In July of 1997, Travis's father, Gary, died. This event caused another change for the family. After the father's death, Travis's 7 younger brothers and sisters also needed a home. They all moved in to live with their paternal grandmother as well. As a teenager and young man, Travis was very social and motivational. He worked as a salesman. His job was with a company named Prepaid Legal Services, which sold legal insurance plans. He was also a motivational speaker for the same company. In his personal time, Travis enjoyed making people laugh. He sometimes performed stand-up comedy for friends. He used a funny stage name for these performances. Travis was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was dedicated to his faith. Friends from his past said that before he joined his church, he got into physical fights with other people somewhat often. After he became more religious, this behavior stopped. Jodi Ann Arias was born on July 9, 1980, in Salinas, California. Her parents were William Arias and Sandra Arias. Jodi attended a high school in Yreka, California. However, she did not finish her studies. She left high school in the 11th grade, which means she dropped out. After leaving school, Jodi worked different short-term jobs. She also had an interest in photography and wanted to become a photographer. Eventually, she also found a job working as a salesperson for the same company as Travis, Prepaid Legal Services. In 2006, the company held a work conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Both Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias attended this conference. This is where they met each other for the first time. After they met, Jodi began learning about Travis's religion. She decided to convert. On November 26, 2006, she was formally baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The person who performed the baptism ceremony was Travis Alexander himself. In February 2007, Travis and Jodi began dating. Their relationship became romantic. To be closer to Travis, Jodi moved from California to Mesa, Arizona, where Travis lived. However, in April 2008, Jodi moved back to California. She went to live in her hometown of Yreka with her grandparents. This meant Travis and Jodi were then in a long-distance relationship. For about a year and a half, they dated on and off. They would take turns traveling between Arizona and California to visit each other. Friends of Travis Alexander, who spent time with the couple later, said the relationship had many arguments and emotional problems. These friends said they were worried by Jodi Arias's behavior during this time. In April 2008, Jodi Arias moved back to Yreka, California, to live with her grandparents. Her relationship with Travis Alexander continued, but it was unstable. They argued frequently. Travis had begun dating other women and told Jodi he wanted to end their romantic involvement. Jodi was very upset by this. In the weeks leading up to June 2008, Jodi began to prepare. She later told police that there was a burglary at her grandparents' home in Yreka. A .25 caliber handgun was reported stolen in this burglary. Police who later investigated this burglary noted that it appeared staged, as if it was set up to explain the missing gun. On June 2, 2008, Jodi Arias rented a silver car in Redding, California. The next day, June 3rd, she purchased a 5-gallon gas can at a Walmart in Ventura, California. She also bought gasoline. She then began the long drive from California to Mesa, Arizona, where Travis Alexander lived. She arrived in the Mesa area very late on June 3rd, or in the early hours of June 4th. On the morning of June 4th, 2008, Jodi went to the Mesa home where Travis lived with roommates. The roommates were not there. Jodi and Travis spent time together in his bedroom. They took intimate photographs of each other using Travis's digital camera. The timestamps on these photos showed they were taken in the early afternoon. Later, at approximately 5:29 p.m., a final photograph was taken. It showed Travis Alexander alive, standing in the shower of his master bathroom. Moments after that last photo, a violent attack began. Jodi Arias attacked Travis Alexander in the shower. She stabbed him multiple times in his back and chest. Travis fought back, which caused defensive wounds on his hands and arms. During the struggle, Jodi also slit Travis's throat. The cut was very deep and severed his jugular vein and carotid artery. After the stabbing and slashing, Jodi shot Travis in the forehead with the .25 caliber handgun. The medical examiner would later state Travis was likely already dead from the knife wounds when the gunshot happened. After killing Travis, Jodi Arias cleaned the scene. She attempted to wash away evidence. She placed Travis's digital camera in the washing machine in his home. She then gathered the gun, the gas can, and other items. She left the house and began driving north. Later that night, she stopped in the desert in northern Arizona. There, she disposed of the gun and the knife. She also threw away the gas can. On June 5th, the day after the murder, Jodi Arias arrived in West Jordan, Utah, a suburb of Salt Lake City. She met with a business associate from Prepaid Legal, a man named Ryan Burns. She attended work meetings with him. Burns noticed that Jodi's hair, which had been blonde, was now dyed dark brown. He also saw that she had several small cuts on her hands. Jodi told him she had cut her hands on broken glass while working at a restaurant. She acted normally during their meetings. On June 6th, Jodi left Utah and drove west toward California. During this drive, she used her cell phone to call Travis Alexander's phone multiple times. She also left voicemail messages for him, asking him to call her back. She accessed his voicemail system to listen to his messages. She returned the rented silver car to the rental company in California on June 7th. The car had been driven about 2,800 miles. A rental clerk noted the car was missing its floor mats and had reddish stains on the front and rear seats. The car was cleaned before any police could examine it. Back in Mesa, Travis's friends grew worried. He had missed an important business call on the evening of June 4th and had not been seen or heard from since. His roommates thought he might be out of town. On June 9th, his concerned friends used a key to enter his locked bedroom. They found a large amount of dried blood on the hallway floor leading to the bathroom. Inside the shower, they found the body of Travis Alexander. When Travis Alexander's friends found his body on June 9th, 2008, they immediately called the police. While speaking to the 911 dispatcher, the friends identified Jodi Arias as a person of interest. They told the dispatcher that Travis had recently said Arias was stalking him, had accessed his email and social media accounts without permission, and had once slashed his car tires. Police officers and detectives arrived at the house. They processed the scene as a homicide. In the washing machine, they found Travis's digital camera. It was damaged from the water, but the memory card was still functional. On the memory card, detectives found deleted photographs. The photos showed Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander together in his bedroom on the afternoon of June 4th. The last images showed Travis in the shower, followed by pictures of his body on the bathroom floor. A bloody palm print on the wall of the hallway was also collected. Forensic analysis later matched the palm print to Jodi Arias, and the blood on it was Travis Alexander's. Police learned that Jodi Arias had rented a car and driven a long distance around the time of the murder. They tracked her movements to Utah and back to California. On July 15, 2008, police arrested Jodi Arias at her grandparents' home in California. She was extradited to Arizona in September and charged with first-degree murder. At first, Arias told investigators she had not been in Arizona on the day of the murder. She said she last saw Travis in March. When police showed her evidence placing her in Mesa, including the photographs from the camera, she changed her story. She then claimed that two masked intruders had broken into the home, killed Travis, and attacked her. Years later, after her arrest, she changed her story again. This time, she said she killed Travis in self-defense after he became violent towards her. The trial began in December 2012. The prosecution argued that Jodi Arias planned the murder. They showed that she rented a car, borrowed a gas can, and dyed her hair beforehand. They said the burglary at her grandparents' home was staged to get the murder weapon. The prosecution presented the graphic crime scene photos and the timeline from the camera. They called witnesses like Ryan Burns from Utah, who testified about Arias's dyed hair and cut hands after the murder. The defense argued that Travis Alexander was abusive and that Arias acted in a moment of panic to save her own life. Jodi Arias testified for 18 days, describing a history of emotional and physical abuse. The prosecution called other women who had dated Travis. They said he was never violent with them. During the trial, a clinical psychologist testifying for the prosecution diagnosed Arias with borderline personality disorder. A psychologist for the defense said she had post-traumatic stress disorder. The jury found Jodi Arias guilty of first-degree premeditated murder on May 8, 2013. The next phase of the trial was to decide her sentence. The same jury had to decide if the murder was cruel enough to justify the death penalty. They agreed that it was. Finally, in a third phase, that jury could not unanimously agree on sentencing. They deadlocked, with most jurors voting for the death penalty, but not all. This resulted in a mistrial for the sentencing portion. A new jury was seated in 2014 for a sentencing retrial. This jury's only job was to choose between the death penalty or life in prison. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, this jury also deadlocked. They could not reach a unanimous decision. Because the jury was hung, the sentencing decision fell to the judge. On April 13, 2015, Judge Sherry Stevens sentenced Jodi Arias to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was also ordered to pay over $32,000 in restitution to Travis Alexander's family. After her sentencing, Arias filed appeals. Her lawyers argued that the extensive media coverage and prosecutorial misconduct prevented a fair trial. In 2020, an appeals court upheld her conviction, stating the evidence of her guilt was overwhelming. The Arizona Supreme Court declined to review the case later that year. Jodi Arias remains incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex Perryville, where she is serving her sentence of natural life. The case was closed with the finality of a life sentence. Story 7. Travis Walton was born in 1953. He grew up in the small town of Snowflake, Arizona. He lived with his mother, Mary Walton, and his older brother, Dwayne. The family did not have a lot of money. Their ranch house was isolated and did not have a telephone. From a young age, Travis, his brother, and his mother were very interested in unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. They read books and magazines about them. They often talked about what they would do if they ever saw one. Travis and Dwayne sometimes said that if they saw a UFO, they would run toward it, not away from it. They thought it would be an exciting chance to see something amazing. As a teenager, Travis became friends with a man named Mike Rogers. Mike was a few years older than Travis. Mike had his own forestry business. He would get contracts from the United States Forest Service. These contracts were for clearing small trees and brush from areas of the national forest. This work is called forest thinning. When Travis became an adult, he needed a job. Mike Rogers gave him work on his forestry crew. The work was very hard. The crew spent all day in thick forest, cutting trees with chainsaws. The men often became tired and frustrated. The work made their morale low, which means they were unhappy and had a bad attitude about the job. In 1975, Mike Rogers got a big contract to thin trees in an area called Turkey Springs. The contract said the work had to be finished by a certain date. Mike was worried because the work was going very slowly. His crew was behind schedule. He wrote a letter to the Forest Service on October 20th. In the letter, he said he did not know if he could finish the job on time. He said his workers had poor morale. He was afraid of a penalty. If he did not finish on time, he could be fined money. He could also be stopped from getting future contracts. This was a serious problem for Mike's business. Travis had a problem in his past. In 1971, when he was younger, he and a friend had stolen some checks from a company. They forged the signatures and cashed the checks. They were caught. Travis pleaded guilty to the crime. He was given probation, which meant he was not sent to jail, but had to be on good behavior for 2 years. After that, his record was cleared. On the night of October 20th, 1975, after Mike wrote his worried letter to the Forest Service, Mike and Travis watched a television movie together. The movie was called The UFO Incident. It was a true story about a married couple named Betty and Barney Hill. The Hills claimed they were taken aboard a spaceship by aliens. After watching the movie, Travis talked about what it might be like to be taken onto a UFO. Travis continued to work for Mike on the Turkey Springs contract. The deadline of November 10th was getting very close. The crew was still far from finished. The men were working every day, but were not moving fast enough. On November 5th, 1975, the forestry crew worked at the Turkey Springs site. Travis Walton did not do any work that day. He told the others he felt sick. He spent most of the day resting in the crew's truck. The crew chief, Mike Rogers, also acted differently. He made the men work much later than usual. They normally stopped at 4 p.m., but that day they worked until after sunset. When it was dark, the 7 men got into Mike's truck to drive home. They drove down a forest road. Suddenly, the men saw a bright light in the woods ahead, just above the trees. Mike Rogers stopped the truck. Travis Walton jumped out of the truck immediately. He ran toward the light. The other men shouted at him to come back, but he did not listen. Travis moved closer to the light, which now looked like a glowing, round object. As he stood under it, a bright beam of light shot down from the object and struck Travis. The light knocked him backwards onto the ground. Inside the truck, the other men were terrified. Mike Rogers, who was driving, panicked. He thought the object was going to attack them next. He put the truck in gear and drove away very fast. He did not stop until they were far down the road. About 15 minutes later, Mike turned the truck around. He drove back to the place where they had left Travis. The strange light was gone. Travis was also gone. The men searched the area quickly with a flashlight, calling his name. They found nothing. They decided they needed to report Travis as missing. The crew drove to the nearest town, Heber, and called the police from a payphone. They told the sheriff that their friend had been hit by a beam of light from a UFO and had vanished. Sheriff Marlon Gillespie met them. He took Mike and 2 crew members back into the forest to search that night. The other 3 crew members refused to go back. They took Mike's personal vehicle and went home. The search in the dark found no sign of Travis. The next morning, the police organized a large search party with volunteers. Nearly 50 people looked for Travis all day. They found no tracks, no pieces of clothing, and no evidence of a struggle. In the middle of the search, Travis's mother, Mary, told the sheriff to stop. She said, "He's not around here. I don't think he's on this earth." The sheriff was surprised by her calmness and her words. He called off the search. Over the next few days, the story was in the newspapers. Reporters came to town. Travis's brother, Dwayne, and Mike Rogers gave interviews to a UFO research group. In these interviews, they did not seem worried. Dwayne said Travis was not even missing, and that he knew where his brother was. Mike Rogers talked about the forestry contract. He mentioned the work had stopped because of this event, and hoped the Forest Service would understand. The police were suspicious. They thought the crew might have murdered Travis and made up the UFO story. On November 10th, all 6 crew members took lie detector tests, called polygraphs. The police asked if they had harmed Travis or knew where his body was. The test results showed that 5 of the men were telling the truth. The result for one man was unclear, but not a clear lie. This made the police confused. Travis Walton was missing for 5 days. Late on the 5th day, November 10th, Travis called his sister's house from a payphone in Heber. He was confused and said he needed help. His brother-in-law, Grant Neff, and his brother, Dwayne, drove to pick him up. They did not tell the police right away. First, they took Travis to a hypnotherapist named Lester Stewart, who was interested in UFOs. Stewart thought Travis seemed disoriented, like someone on drugs. He saw a small, fresh mark on Travis's arm that looked like a needle mark. Dwayne then called UFO researchers, who arranged for 2 doctors to see Travis. Dwayne would not let the doctors record the visit or ask Travis about what happened. The doctors also saw the mark on his arm. Finally, Dwayne called the sheriff to say Travis was back. When the sheriff arrived, Travis and Dwayne would not let him record their conversation. Travis told a story of waking up on a spaceship with short, bald creatures and later, human-looking beings. He said he finally woke up on the side of a highway, saw the UFO fly away, and walked to a phone booth. A tabloid newspaper, the National Enquirer, heard about the story. They offered Travis and the crew money for their story. They paid for Travis and Dwayne to stay in a hotel. In return, Travis gave the newspaper the exclusive rights to his account. The newspaper arranged for Travis to take a private lie detector test. During this test, the examiner said Travis tried to cheat by holding his breath. The examiner said Travis was being deceptive. The National Enquirer did not publish these results. Instead, they published a story saying Travis and the crew had passed their tests, and that this was a real UFO abduction. After the news stories about Travis Walton's return, many people were skeptical. Investigators and scientists began to look closely at the details of the story. They found problems with the evidence. A well-known UFO investigator named Philip J. Klass studied the case. He found that the lie detector test the National Enquirer talked about was not reliable. The test that said Travis was truthful was arranged and paid for by the tabloid. Klass discovered there was another, earlier test. In that first test, the examiner said Travis tried to trick the machine and was being deceptive. This information was not widely shared by those promoting the UFO story. Over the years, the story did not go away. Travis Walton wrote a book in 1978 called The Walton Experience. He made money from the book. In 1993, a movie based on the book was made called Fire in the Sky. Travis was paid for his story. He also began to give talks at UFO conferences, where he would charge money to tell his story. Meanwhile, investigators kept looking for a logical explanation. They focused on the problems with Mike Rogers' forestry contract. The contract had an act of God clause. This clause meant that if something happened that was out of the crew's control, like a natural disaster, they would not be penalized for missing the deadline. Some researchers believed the UFO story was created to use this clause. If the crew claimed they saw a UFO and their co-worker was abducted, they could argue it was an act of God that stopped them from working. This would save Mike Rogers from having to pay a large financial penalty. In 2021, Mike Rogers himself made a statement on social media. He said he was no longer a witness to Travis Walton's abduction. He was angry at Travis for keeping secrets from him. Later, in a recorded phone call with a film producer, Mike Rogers said more. He admitted that he and Travis had talked about creating a UFO hoax. He said that on the night of November 5th, Travis jumping out of the truck was deliberate, and the event was staged. After this confession became public, Mike and Travis reconciled, and Mike took back his statement. But the recorded call made many people believe the event was a planned trick. A researcher named Robert Schaefer proposed a specific method for the hoax. He noted a 70-foot tall fire lookout tower, called Gentry Tower, was near the area. This tower had a bright spotlight. Schaefer suggested that on the night in question, the crew drove home a different way, past this tower. Travis Walton could have run toward the tower's light. An accomplice in the tower could have turned the spotlight on him, making it look like a beam from a UFO. When Mike Rogers drove the scared crew away and later returned, they could have gone to a different spot in the forest, not the original place. This would explain why no evidence was found. The official investigation by the police was closed after Travis returned. No one was ever charged with a crime related to the disappearance. The Forest Service contract was not completed by the deadline. It is believed that Mike Rogers used the UFO event as a reason for the delay, possibly avoiding the financial penalty under the Act of God clause. Travis Walton continues to say his story is true. He makes a living from telling the story at events. Mike Rogers left the forestry business. The other crew members have given different statements over time, with some later saying they believed it was a hoax. The Walton case is now widely considered by scientists and skeptics to be a hoax created to make money and to solve a business problem. The story ended with a planned deception that became a famous legend. Story 8. Chizuo Matsumoto was born on March 2, 1955, in Japan's Kumamoto Prefecture. He was the fourth son in a large family. His family was poor and made their living by crafting traditional tatama floor mats. From the time he was a baby, Chizuo had a condition called infantile glaucoma. This condition caused him to lose all sight in his left eye. It also made him partially blind in his right eye. Because of his poor vision, he could not learn the family's mat-making trade. When he was 6 years old, his family enrolled him in a school for the blind. After he moved to the school, he did not live with his family again. At the school, he was one of the only students who could still see a little bit. He used this to his advantage. He found a way to make money by guiding other blind children to a local candy store. This made him somewhat popular. However, he also developed a habit of bullying the other students. He would beat them and force them to give him money. During his teenage years, he often shared a fantasy with his schoolmates. He told them he dreamed of ruling a kingdom of robots with complete power. He also said he wanted to become the Prime Minister of Japan one day. He finished his studies at the School for the Blind in 1973. After graduation, he applied to study law at the University of Tokyo, which is a very prestigious school. He was not accepted. He then decided to study acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. In Japan, these were common careers for blind people to pursue. He learned these skills and later opened a small Chinese medicine shop outside of Tokyo. Around this time, he got married. He and his wife would eventually have 6 children together. Their first child was born in 1978. In 1981, Matsumoto ran into legal trouble with his medicine shop. He was found guilty of practicing pharmacy without the proper license. He was also guilty of selling drugs that were not approved by regulations. For this crime, he was ordered to pay a fine. During this period of his life, he began to develop a strong interest in religion. He had a young family to support, but in his free time, he studied many different spiritual ideas. He started by reading about Chinese astrology and Taoism. Later, he studied Western esoteric beliefs, yoga, meditation, and various forms of Buddhism and Christianity. He changed his appearance, letting his hair and beard grow long. He also changed his name from Chizuo Matsumoto to Shoko Asahara. Starting in 1984, Asahara traveled to India several times. On one trip, he met the Dalai Lama. When he returned to Japan, Asahara told people he had achieved enlightenment, the highest spiritual state. He claimed he met the Hindu god Shiva and was given a special mission to teach the true form of Buddhism in Japan. The Dalai Lama later said he only met a strange Japanese man and was not close to him. In 1987, Asahara began calling himself a guru, which means a spiritual teacher. He claimed he had learned to meditate so well that he could levitate or lift his own body with his mind. He made pamphlets to advertise this, but very few people paid attention. In 1987, Shoko Asahara used his one-bedroom apartment in Tokyo to start a group. It began as a class for yoga and meditation. He named this group Aum Shinrikyo, which means Supreme Truth. The group officially became a recognized religious organization in 1989. It attracted many members, including some very smart graduates from Japan's top universities. From the beginning, the group acted in controversial ways. Former members and families accused Aum Shinrikyo of tricking new recruits, holding people against their will, and forcing members to donate all their money. In February 1989, a member who tried to leave the group was murdered. The group also published comics and videos that mixed their religious ideas with popular science fiction and fantasy themes. The first major crime linked to the group involved a lawyer named Tsutsumi Sakamoto. Sakamoto was helping people who wanted to sue Aum Shinrikyo. In October 1989, a television station interviewed him. The station then secretly showed the interview tape to Aum members. A few days later, on November 3rd, several senior Aum members drove to Yokohama, where Sakamoto lived. They planned to kidnap him from a train station using a drug, but he was not there. 2 days later, in the early morning of November 5th, the same members entered Sakamoto's apartment. They killed Tsutsumi Sakamoto, his wife Satoko, and their 14-month-old son Tatsuhiko. They used a hammer, a strangling cord, and injections of potassium chloride, a chemical that stops the heart. After the murders, they placed each body in a separate metal drum. They hid the drums in remote, rural areas in 3 different parts of Japan. They also destroyed the victims' teeth to make identification difficult. The bodies would not be found for years. Asahara and his group became focused on biblical prophecies of an apocalyptic war. They began to stockpile weapons and study chemical warfare. In 1993, they tried to start an anthrax epidemic in Tokyo by spraying bacteria from a building roof. The attempt failed and only caused complaints about a bad smell. The group then began making nerve agents, which are extremely poisonous chemicals. In June 1994, they decided to test one of these agents, sarin, and also to attack some judges who were ruling against them in a court case. They drove a converted refrigerator truck to the city of Matsumoto. Inside the truck, they heated liquid sarin to turn it into a gas and used fans to blow it into a neighborhood where the judges lived. The poisonous cloud drifted through the area. 8 people died, including residents who had nothing to do with the court case. Hundreds more were injured and needed hospital treatment. Between 1994 and 1995, the group used another nerve agent called VX to attack individuals. In December 1994, 2 Aum members sprinkled VX on the neck of a man they thought was a spy. He chased them before collapsing, and he died 10 days later. In January 1995, they used VX in a syringe to attack the leader of a group that protested against Aum Shinrikyo. He survived but was seriously injured. In February 1995, Aum members kidnapped a 69-year-old man named Kiyoshi Kariya off a Tokyo street. His sister was a member who had escaped from the group. They took him to a cult building, interrogated him, and killed him. They then destroyed his body using a special incinerator. During this time, the Japanese police were gathering evidence and planned massive raids on all Aum Shinrikyo facilities. Prosecutors later alleged that Asahara learned about these planned raids. In response, he ordered a large-scale attack to create chaos and divert police attention. On the morning of March 20th, 1995, teams of Aum members carried out a coordinated attack. They boarded 5 different trains on the Tokyo subway system during the busy rush hour. They carried plastic bags filled with a liquid chemical. They dropped the bags on the floor and pierced them with sharpened umbrella tips. The liquid was a form of sarin nerve agent, which evaporated into a deadly gas inside the packed subway cars. 13 people died immediately or soon after. Thousands of commuters were injured, experiencing blurred vision, difficulty breathing, and nausea. The subway system was thrown into panic. The Tokyo subway attack created immediate and massive panic. Police and emergency services rushed to the stations. Victims were taken to hospitals, and doctors quickly identified the symptoms as poisoning by a nerve agent. Within hours, suspicion fell on Aum Shinrikyo because of their known interest in chemicals and their previous activity in Matsumoto. The planned police raids on cult facilities across Japan were launched immediately that same day, March 20th, 1995. The raids revealed the full scale of Aum Shinrikyo's operations. At their main compound near Mount Fuji, police found large laboratories for manufacturing chemical weapons. They discovered huge stockpiles of chemicals that could be used to make enough sarin to kill millions of people. They also found equipment for making biological weapons, explosives, and a Russian military helicopter the cult had purchased. Evidence of the VX attacks and the kidnapping of Kiyoshi Kariya was also uncovered. Over the following weeks and months, police arrested dozens of cult members. The investigation was complex because the group was large and well organized. Senior members began to confess and provide details about the crimes. It was through these confessions that police learned the locations of the metal drums containing the bodies of the Sakamoto family. The remains were recovered from the rural hiding places in September 1995. The public was shocked by the discoveries. The government moved to strip Aum Shinrikyo of its status as a religious organization. However, the cult did not disappear. In the months after the subway attack, there were more incidents. In April, the national police chief was shot and seriously wounded outside his home. In May, a senior Aum scientist was stabbed to death in public. Also in May, police found and defused a crude hydrogen cyanide bomb in a Tokyo subway restroom. It was placed there by remaining cult members in another attempted attack. Shoko Asahara himself hid in a secret room behind a wall in a cult building. Police finally found and arrested him on May 16, 1995. His trial began in 1996. The trial lasted for over 8 years. Prosecutors charged him with planning and ordering 13 separate criminal incidents, including the murders of the Sakamoto family, the Matsumoto sarin attack, and the Tokyo subway attack. During the trial, he mostly remained silent or mumbled incoherently. His lawyers argued he was mentally unfit, but court-appointed doctors found he was choosing not to speak. Many of Asahara's top followers were also put on trial. They testified in detail about his orders and how the crimes were carried out. Based on this testimony and the physical evidence, Asahara was found guilty on all major charges. On February 27, 2004, the court sentenced him to death by hanging. His lawyers appealed multiple times, but higher courts upheld the sentence. The Supreme Court of Japan finalized his death sentence in 2006. While the legal process continued, the cult changed its name to Aleph and claimed it had reformed. It remained under constant police surveillance. Some victims of the subway attacks suffered permanent health problems. Others faced discrimination because of the fear of the cult. 13 Aum Shinrikyo members, including Shoko Asahara, were sentenced to death for their roles in the crimes. After all appeals were exhausted, the executions were carried out in 2018. Shoko Asahara was hanged on July 6, 2018, along with 6 of his closest followers. The remaining 6 were executed later that month. The executions closed the legal chapter on one of the most severe crimes in modern Japanese history. The story ends with the execution of the perpetrator and his most responsible followers. Story 9. Anatoly Yuryevich Moskvin was born on September 1, 1966, in the city of Gorky, Soviet Russia. This city is now called Nizhny Novgorod. He was an only child and lived with his parents in a small apartment. His parents were ordinary people. They loved their son and supported him. From a very young age, Anatoly was a quiet and intelligent boy. He liked books and learning. He did well in school, especially in languages and history. However, one event from his childhood was not normal. When he was a young boy, he was taken to a funeral for an 11-year-old girl. At this funeral, an adult forced Anatoly to kiss the forehead of the dead girl. He later wrote about this event. He said he felt scared and could not refuse. This was his first close experience with death. As he grew older, Anatoly started to visit cemeteries. At first, he went with friends. They would walk among the graves. But soon, Anatoly began going alone. He was especially interested in the Krasnaya Etna cemetery in his city. He spent many hours there, reading the names and dates on the tombstones. He felt calm in cemeteries. This was unusual for a teenager, but his parents did not stop him. They thought it was just a strange hobby. After finishing school, Anatoly was very successful in his studies. He went to Moscow State University, a very good school. He studied philology, which is the study of languages and literature. He was brilliant. He learned to speak 13 languages. His main interest was Celtic history and folklore. After university, he returned to Nizhny Novgorod. He became a lecturer at the Nizhny Novgorod Linguistic University. He also wrote many academic articles and books. Other academics respected him. Some thought he was a genius. Even as a successful adult, Anatoly lived a very secluded life. He continued to live in the same apartment with his aging parents. He never married. He never had a girlfriend. He did not drink alcohol or smoke. He spent almost all his time working, reading, or visiting cemeteries. He had almost no friends. He did not go to parties or social events. His world was his work, his books, and the graveyards. His interest in cemeteries became his job. In 2005, a publisher asked him to make a detailed list of all the graves in hundreds of cemeteries in the region. For 2 years, Anatoly did this work. He walked up to 30 kilometers every day. He visited over 750 cemeteries. He often slept outside, sometimes in the cemeteries themselves. He even slept in an empty coffin once. Police sometimes stopped him because he looked suspicious, but he showed them his academic papers. They always let him go. During his travels, he began writing for local newspapers. He wrote articles about the history of the city's cemeteries. He called himself a necropolist, an expert on graves. People read his articles and thought he was just a very dedicated historian. In his personal life, he collected 2 things, books and dolls. He had over 60,000 books in his apartment. He also had a large collection of dolls. His parents knew about the dolls. The dolls were in the rooms of the small apartment. His parents thought it was another one of his unusual hobbies. They did not ask many questions. Anatoly once tried to adopt a little girl. He wanted to have a child, specifically a daughter, but the adoption officials said no. They said his income was too low. He was very disappointed by this. He lived a quiet, lonely life with his parents and his collections, spending his days between university lectures and long, solitary walks through fields of gravestones. Anatoly Moskvin's quiet life as a scholar hid his secret activities. For many years, his interest in cemeteries had been changing. He began to focus on the graves of children. He would read obituaries in local newspapers. He looked for notices about girls who had died, usually between the ages of 3 and 13. He felt a deep sympathy for them. He started to believe that these children were lonely and wanted to be saved from their graves. His belief grew from his studies. He had read about ancient Druids and Siberian Yakuts who slept on graves to talk to the dead. Moskvin began to do this. After finding a recent obituary that interested him, he would go to the child's grave at night. He would lie on the ground and try to listen. He believed the spirit of the child would tell him if it wanted to be brought back to life. He did this for years, believing he had their permission. As he got older, sleeping on the cold ground became painful. He decided it would be better to bring the children to a warm, safe place. This is when he began to dig up the bodies. He always did this alone at night in remote parts of cemeteries. He used simple tools like a shovel. He was careful to avoid security. He had been walking these cemeteries for so long that he knew every path and hiding spot. After removing a body, he faced a problem. The bodies would decay. He did not want them to rot. He researched ways to preserve them. He learned about mummification. His method was to use a mixture of salt and baking soda. He would cover the body in this powder to draw out all the moisture and dry it. He did not do this at home right away. First, he would hide the body in a secret, dry place near the cemetery. This could be an old shed, a dense thicket, or a storage crypt. He left the body there for many months, until it was completely dry and mummified. Once the body was preserved, he would move it to his apartment. He carried them in large bags, often during the day, looking like a man carrying a sack of laundry or books. His parents were often away for long periods visiting relatives, so he had time alone in the apartment. He kept the bodies in his room and in the garage. The dried bodies looked shriveled and scary. Moskvin wanted to make them look like nice dolls, so they would be beautiful, and so no one would suspect what they really were. He used rags and cloth to pad out the shrunken limbs and torsos. He wrapped the limbs tightly with bandages. For the faces, he sometimes made masks from wax and painted them with nail polish to look like closed eyes and rosy cheeks. He dressed each body in bright children's clothing, dresses, skirts, and sweaters. He put wigs of human hair on their heads. He put shoes on their feet. When he was finished, they looked like large, strange, but homemade dolls. He would then sit them on chairs, sofas, or shelves around his cluttered rooms. He treated these dolls as if they were alive. He gave them names based on the names on the graves. He talked to them. He read books to them. He played children's movies and cartoons on the television for them. He celebrated their birthdays, marking the date they were born with a small cake. He considered them his family, the daughters he never had. His parents saw the dolls, but thought they were just part of his doll collection. They never touched them or looked closely. One doll even sat in his parents' own bedroom. Over approximately 10 years, Moskvin did this many times. He collected the mummified bodies of 29 girls. The bodies came from cemeteries all over the Nizhny Novgorod region, and some may have come from even farther away. While he did this, he continued his normal life. He taught his university classes, wrote his articles, and gave interviews as a cemetery expert. No one connected the respected scholar to the grave robberies happening in the area. Police in the region knew that graves were being vandalized. They found empty, dug-up graves. They found personal items missing from coffins. They found footprints. But they had no suspects. The crime seemed random and without a pattern. They did not suspect a lonely university lecturer who lived with his parents. The crimes were discovered because police from the Center for Combating Extremism were investigating a series of grave vandalisms. Many families had reported that the graves of their young daughters had been dug up and the bodies stolen. The police had collected evidence from these sites, including photographs and shoe prints, but they had no strong leads. The break in the case came from a separate tip. Someone reported suspicious activity near a cemetery, and the description of a man matched Anatoly Moskvin. The police decided to visit his apartment for questioning. On November 2, 2011, police officers arrived at the Moskvin family apartment. When they entered, they saw a cluttered home filled with books and what appeared to be a large collection of life-size dolls. Moskvin's elderly parents were present. During their initial conversation, the officers grew suspicious of the dolls. Upon closer inspection, they realized these were not normal dolls. The bodies felt and looked wrong. The police immediately secured the apartment and called for forensic experts. A full search of the apartment and a nearby garage was conducted. Experts confirmed that 26 of the dolls were in fact the mummified remains of human children. Later, the count was revised to 29. Police found maps of local cemeteries, photographs of open graves, and instructions on mummification. They found shoes that matched prints from some of the vandalized graves. They also found many small personal items, like nameplates from headstones and pieces of burial clothing. Anatoly Moskvin was arrested at the scene. He did not try to resist or deny what he had done. He cooperated fully with the investigators. He explained his belief that the children needed to be rescued and that he was trying to bring them back to life. He told police where he had gotten each body and described his mummification process. He insisted he felt no sexual attraction to the remains. He considered them his daughters. The next step was a formal psychiatric evaluation. Moskvin was examined by a team of court-appointed doctors for several months. The doctors concluded that he was suffering from a severe form of paranoid schizophrenia. They determined that he lived in a complex delusional reality. He could not understand the wrongful nature of his actions because his mental illness made him believe he was saving the children. Therefore, he was declared mentally unfit to stand trial in a normal criminal court. The case went to the Leninsky District Court in May 2012. Because of the psychiatric finding, he was found not criminally responsible. Instead of a prison sentence, the judge ordered compulsory medical treatment in a secure psychiatric hospital. The prosecution agreed with this decision. The charges of desecrating graves and bodies were confirmed, but no criminal penalty was applied due to his illness. After the trial, the identified victims were returned to their families for proper reburial. The police work involved notifying dozens of grieving families, causing them renewed pain and trauma. Moskvin was admitted to a psychiatric clinic. His treatment is reviewed by a court every few years. Each time, doctors have stated that his delusions remain and that he is still a danger to society. His requests to be released into outpatient care have been denied. Anatoly Moskvin remains in a psychiatric institution to this day, receiving treatment for his schizophrenia, while the families of his victims continue to mourn their lost children. Story 10. Gerd Wenzinger was born in 1943 in the small town of St. Blasian in Germany. He was the second of 3 children in his family. His father worked in a local factory, and his mother took care of the home. The family did not have a lot of money, but they lived a quiet, ordinary life. From a very young age, Gerd was different from his brothers. He was not interested in sports or playing outside. Instead, he He liked quiet activities. He loved music and learned to play the violin. He also spent hours drawing pictures and making small models from clay. His parents were happy he had these hobbies. They thought he was a creative and sensitive boy. Gerd did well in school. He was especially good at subjects like math and science. After he finished high school, he went to university. At first, he chose to study mathematics and physics. He thought he might become a teacher or a scientist. But after 2 years, he changed his mind. He decided to study medicine instead. He told his family he wanted to help people. While he was at university, he met a woman, and they fell in love. After his studies, they got married. Gerd became a doctor, a general practitioner, and started his own medical practice in the city of Stuttgart in 1978. His wife helped manage the office. To everyone who knew them, they seemed like a normal, professional couple. Gerd was well liked by his patients. He was calm and polite. However, his marriage did not last. After 4 years together, he and his wife grew apart. They argued often. They decided to separate and then divorced. After the divorce, Gerd did not have a serious relationship again. He lived alone. He began to have many short relationships with different women. He would meet a woman, spend time with her for a few weeks or months, and then the relationship would end. Gerd continued his work as a doctor. But in 1990, something happened that changed his life. A woman he was in a relationship with was at his house. She found a hidden video camera and some tapes. She decided to watch one of the tapes. The tape showed Gerd in his medical office. It showed him giving female patients an injection. The women would become very drowsy and could not move. Then, the tape showed Gerd touching the women in a sexual way while they were helpless. He was hurting them for his own pleasure. The woman was shocked. She took the tape and sent it to the German medical authorities. The authorities investigated. They saw that Gerd had secretly filmed himself assaulting his patients. Because of this, he was forced to give up his medical license. He could no longer work as a doctor. He was not charged with a crime at this time, but his career was over. In 1991, Gerd sold his practice and his house in Stuttgart. He moved far away, to the city of Berlin. He started a new life there. He told his new neighbors he was retired. He was friendly and quiet. He played his violin sometimes. He continued to have many different women visit his new apartment. He introduced some of these women to his neighbors as his friends. His neighbors thought he was just a lonely man who liked company. Gerd also began to take many vacations. He often traveled to a country far away in South America called Brazil. He told people he loved the weather and the beaches there. He would stay for weeks at a time. This was Gerd Wenzinger's life up to the early 1990s. He was a man who had lost his career after being caught doing terrible things to patients. He now lived in a new city, alone, with habits that seemed unusual but harmless to those who did not look too closely. In Berlin, Gerd Wenzinger used his medical knowledge and his polite manner to commit crimes. He often looked for women who were prostitutes and who were alone. He would approach them on the street or in bars. He would offer them a lot of money to come back to his apartment for what he called a private session. He told them he was a retired doctor and that he liked to give massages. The women needing money would agree to go with him. Once a woman was inside his apartment, Gerd would offer her a drink. The drink would contain a strong sedative drug that he had obtained because of his former medical career. This drug would make the woman feel very sleepy and weak very quickly. She would not be able to move or scream. When the woman was helpless, Gerd would tie her to a special table he had built in a room in his apartment. He then began to torture the women. He filmed everything with a video camera. He used different tools to cause pain. He did this for his own sexual pleasure. The torture would go on for many hours. During this time, he would also inject the women with more drugs to keep them from moving, but he was careful to keep them conscious so they could feel everything. Eventually, the torture would cause the woman to die from her injuries and shock. After the woman was dead, Gerd would not stop. He would perform sexual acts on the dead body. Then, he would clean the body in the room. Next, he would use a large electric chainsaw to cut the body into many pieces. He did this in his bathtub to contain the mess. He would cut the body into more than 40 parts. He would then wash the parts. He did this to make the body very hard to identify. To get rid of the body parts, Gerd would put them into plastic bags. He would wait until late at night. He would then drive his car to remote areas outside the city. One place he used was near the Oderhavel Canal, a waterway north of Berlin. He would scatter the bags along the banks of the canal and throw some into the water. On other occasions, he would drive to distant sections of the German highway system, called the Autobahn. He would throw bags containing frozen body parts out of his car window into forests or bushes near the road. The first victim known to be killed this way was a 23-year-old woman named Dana Franska. She worked as a prostitute. In June of 1994, Gerd brought her to his apartment. He drugged her, tortured her for a long time, and killed her. He then used his chainsaw to cut her body apart. He put the parts into bags and drove to the Oderhavel Canal area. He left the bags there. A few days later, people walking near the canal found the bags. They called the police. The police found 42 separate body parts. They did not know who the woman was. Later that same year, in November of 1994, another woman was killed. Her name was Sabrina G. She was 19 years old and also a prostitute. Gerd used the same method. He brought her to his apartment, drugged her, tortured her, killed her, and cut her body apart. This time, he froze some of the body parts. He then drove to a different area, the Autobahn between Hamburg and Lübeck. He threw the bags out of his car. A driver found one of the bags by the road and called the police. The police found her head and organs. During his vacations to Brazil, Gerd Wenzinger did similar things. He would find prostitutes in Brazilian cities. He would hire them and take them to a rented apartment or hotel room. He would drug them and torture them while filming with his camera. Brazilian police later said he tortured around 90 women in Brazil and killed at least 4 of them there. Gerd kept all the videotapes of his crimes. He labeled them and stored them in his Berlin apartment. He felt safe and believed he would never be caught. The police in Germany had found 2 bodies, but they had no clues about who had killed them. They did not know the victims were connected. They did not have a suspect. The case was broken open in May of 1996. A parcel arrived at the office of the Berlin Criminal Police. Inside the parcel was a video cassette tape. There was no note. The police played the tape. The video showed clear images of a man torturing and killing women inside an apartment. The man's face was visible. One of the women on the tape was identified as Dana Franska. The police now had proof that her death was a murder, and they had a clear image of the killer. The police immediately formed a special team. Their first job was to identify the man on the tape. They showed pictures from the video to police officers and to people who worked in the areas where the bodies were found. An officer from a different department recognized the man. He said the man looked like a person named Gerd Wenzinger. This officer knew about Wenzinger because of the old medical license case from Stuttgart. The police checked their records and found Wenzinger's address in Berlin. The police went to Wenzinger's apartment in Berlin, but the apartment was empty. Wenzinger was not there. Neighbors said he had left suddenly a few weeks earlier. They said he often traveled to Brazil. The police entered the apartment with a search warrant. Inside, they found a very clean home. However, in a hidden storage space, they found many videotapes. They also found medical supplies, including sedatives. They found tools like saws and knives. Forensic tests in the apartment found tiny traces of blood, even though the rooms had been cleaned. The blood matched Dana Franska. The police now knew Gerd Wenzinger was the killer. They issued a national arrest warrant for him for murder. They also contacted police in other countries. They learned from Brazilian police that Wenzinger was already in jail in Brazil. He had been arrested there for a different crime. He had attacked a woman in a hotel room in Brazil. That woman survived and went to the police. The Brazilian police had arrested him for this sexual assault. When the German police told them Wenzinger was wanted for murder, the Brazilian authorities agreed to keep him in jail. The German government began the process of extradition. This is a legal procedure where one country sends a suspected criminal to another country to face trial. The paperwork took many months. During this time, Wenzinger was held in a Brazilian prison. He learned that his extradition to Germany was approved. He would be sent back to Berlin to stand trial for the murder of Dana Franzke. When Wenzinger heard this news, he became desperate. 2 days before he was to be transferred to Germany, he tried to kill himself in his prison cell. He collected many antibiotic pills he had been given and took them all at once. Prison guards found him and took him to a hospital. Doctors pumped his stomach and saved his life. He was brought back to his prison cell. The next day, on June 16, 1997, Gerd Wenzinger was alone in his cell. He used the sheets from his bed. He tied them together to make a rope. He tied one end to a bar on the window of his cell. He put the other end around his neck. He then hanged himself. This time he was successful. The guards found him dead. Before he died, Wenzinger wrote a suicide note. In the note, he said he did not murder anyone. He wrote that he only drugged women. He said Dana Franzke died from a drug overdose. However, the official autopsy on Franzke's body found no signs of the drugs he mentioned. It did find the sedatives he used to paralyze his victims. The evidence from the videotape and his apartment proved he was guilty of torture and murder. With Wenzinger dead, the official investigation in Germany closed. The families of Dana Franzke and Sabrina G. were told the killer was found, but had taken his own life. They did not get a trial, but they got the answer to who was responsible. The Brazilian police continued to investigate his crimes in their country, based on the videos and survivor statements. Gerd Wenzinger was buried in a cemetery in Salvador, Brazil, on July 21, 1997, bringing a final end to the case.